Welcome to the Higher Ed Athletics Podcast. Today, I'm joined by John Cunningham, Athletic Director at University of Cincinnati. John, thanks for being on the podcast.
Travis, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking about, it felt bittersweet for me to be working on the questions and doing research for UC the night that you all beat us in football at IU. But just an incredible atmosphere to be a part of. And I don't think anyone should be surprised by the success that Cincinnati football is having. But today we're going to talk mostly about your athletic department and your institution. So it's no secret. We're going to talk about heavily about the changes coming to your athletic department. But I was hoping maybe at first you could just give people that aren't familiar with UC in general, just a kind of an institutional profile, where you all are located within Cincinnati, and then just a little bit about the higher ed side of things, the institution, and then also, number of sports and number of athletes, that type of thing.
Sure. Happy to do that. I'll start off by saying that we really enjoyed our trip up to Bloomington. I've been to Assembly Hall a couple times, so I know the basketball side is always really strong, but man, the crowd was great for a football game and a hard fought battle. So had a lot of fun and our fans really enjoyed it. University of Cincinnati is an urban institution. We're 5 minutes away from downtown Cincinnati, kind of tucked in there, but we've got a really nice campus community as well. So we built a little shell kind of around our campus, and so it feels very much like you're on a regular campus with housing and student vibe, and it really has that sense, even though we're right there in an urban area. 47,000 students, 320,000 living alumni, so a large institution. And on the athletic side of things, we've got 18 sports and 450 student athletes, and we're all housed in one building, which really makes us unique. We've got a Lindner building that attaches itself to our football stadium here, and it's 8 floors, and so every single one of our sports is in this building, and we all get to know each other really well, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, when I was on campus in May, I probably parked illegally just so I could walk into the football stadium real quick, and the historic building right up against the back of the end zone, just the whole athletic village is just incredible. And so if no one's been there, it really does feel like you're right downtown Cincinnati, and just an incredible institution. But being in the city like you are within Cincinnati, what are some maybe advantages, but maybe what are some challenges as an athletic department in such a busy city of Cincinnati?
I think I'll go back first to the Olympic Village situation that we had. I'll give a lot of credit to a former athletic director named Bob Going that had this vision and really built it so that all of our student athlete facilities were sort of right in a really tight footprint. And that's one thing that we sell a lot to our recruits coming in, that you can do everything you need to do in just steps away, and then go to the academic side of campus. And again, it's just a few blocks one direction, and you're there on campus doing everything you need to do academically. So that's certainly something that was a vision of Bob Goings that I'll give him a lot of credit for. But being an urban institution, some of the challenges, you're in a pro sports market. So, you have a little bit more competition that way for the entertainment dollar. But again, it also brings a lot to the table. So our student athletes can take advantage of everything that a big city has to offer. And our coaches and staff can take advantage of everything a big city has to offer. But we don't have that huge traffic situation that you run into in some cities. We have great communities for people to live in that are within 15, 20 minutes of campus. And so you still get all the benefits of a smaller town, but it's just a nice size city that's very approachable.
Do you think there'd be any type of identity change to the institution of joining the Big 12 that will help the institution with any goals that it has? You already mentioned how big the institution is, but going to that Big 12, obviously we know what it does to the athletic department, but what's that maybe do for UC and really the city of Cincinnati, in your opinion?
Certainly helps drive our brand, and that's something we talk a lot about whenever we discuss conference affiliation. I'll mention that, when we've got two people crossing paths in the Atlanta airport and they both have the CPAW on, it never hurts when you're in a bigger conference. You're getting more exposure, and it's helping you drive your brand across the country. And obviously, every institution is looking to do that. I mean, tuition and enrollment is crucial to everything that we do here. And so the more that we can get eyes on our product, which is our institution, our educational institution, the better. And I think it's good for student life. I mean, being a part of major college football, major basketball, having access to great athletics is something that a lot of young people want to be a part of and experience. Even if they're not a student athlete, they want to go and attend the games and be right there for the action. So going into the Big 12 will help out a great deal.
Yeah, and before we go back into talking more about Big 12 and more about your athletic department, I want to kind of focus on a theme I've been talking to ADs this season on the podcast is really about your career background. And there's been a lot of people I've been interviewing have a compliance background. So I believe from what I looked at, you were in compliance. Actually doing, I think it said that you started doing initial and continuing and transfer eligibility. That's what I do for IU. And so transfer eligibility is a little more challenging right now with how many evals you have to do. But given everything going on in college athletics, what skill set or understanding of the industry did starting in compliance actually do for you now that maybe helps you in the AD chair?
Yeah, I tell people that are talking about potentially going into compliance, the best thing about it is you get to deal with all sports, and you get to deal with all different coaches and kind of understand where they're coming from and their unique challenges amongst the different sports. And then you obviously understand the governance structure, which a lot of people I think in the industry don't ever get their head around fully, unless you're a compliance individual and you're going to sessions on it at NACDA and those types of things. You really get to dive in on how the rules become rules, what it means to change a rule, and then the reasonings behind a lot of the rules. So I've always felt like it was a great benefit to me. It was the perfect start for me out of law school. It fit with my training in law school, kind of an administrative law type of role. And again, it allowed me to deal with all different sports and all administrators across the board. You get to know your AD, you get to know your associate ADs early on in your career, and that always helps you too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with seeing more people with that compliance and that law background like yourself that are now leading athletic departments, how that'll come up with the constitution change and things that are coming to the governance structure, because I think it's safe to say, 20 years ago, there wasn't as many compliance people that are leading athletic departments. So I thought that was interesting to see you and others that I've interviewed this summer and fall, but also about transitioning out of compliance and taking that step to the administration. So at what point did you realize that you wanted to expand your career outside of compliance? Was that maybe something you always wanted to do when you were coming out of law school? And then how did you actually do it? And what did you make known to did you make known to your direct report, or how did that develop that you switched out of compliance and more into administration roles?
Yeah, Travis, I do think it was something that I always thought I wanted to do, was to get into upper administration and not just handle compliance day to day, although I did enjoy that job. So I would say a few years in, I started having conversations with ADs that I was working for, and associate ADs that I was working for, and letting them know that I had some other interests and just picking their brain. And then I had a kind of a fateful conversation with Mark Coyle at Boise State when he took over as athletic director. I beat him there by a few months at Boise State. And so I was new to the institution, and he came in as a brand new AD. And we just sat down for a coffee one day, and I told him, he asked me, what is it that you're looking to do long term? And I just said, I want to be an athletic director. at the Division I level. And so from there, he said, I'm going to help you get there. And a lot of people will say that, but he really took it upon himself to slowly get me there through a series of increased responsibilities. And that led me here today. So I owe a lot of it to him to seeing some potential in me beyond rules and regulations in the compliance realm.
And I should know this, but he also went to Minnesota, right? Was he the AD at Minnesota too, or that explains the move to Minnesota?
Yeah, it explains a move from Boise to Syracuse, and then from Syracuse to Minnesota. So I was with Mark for 8 years, and traveled to 3 different locations with him, and obviously consider him a mentor.
I feel like you have to say Midwest this question, but you've worked at several different areas. You have a favorite region of the country to live in? Your family as well?
Yeah, I get asked that all the time, and the honest answer is I don't. The honest answer is that everywhere you go, there's some good and some bad, and there's great people everywhere. And I've been lucky enough to find a lot of great people, and it's part of the thing that I've enjoyed the most about my career path is being able to drop in different parts of the country and reconnect with people that I respect and really like being around. So I could walk you through each place and the good and the bad, but they certainly all have it.
Well, I love stopping at college campuses when I'm on a road trip, but I'm from Indiana. I'm blessed to have worked at pretty much my entire career has just been at Indiana schools, and will probably always be like that. But I did stop at Boise State a few years ago. My twin brother was working at Oregon at the time. I had to drive his truck all the way from Indianapolis to Eugene. And I stopped off at a couple schools, and that blue turf, pretty cool to see live and in person. And there's really not a lot going on around there besides the university. So I just imagine that's an awesome place to work. But I agree, every place has its good and its bad.
Yeah, it was a special place to be. My wife and I had our twins out there, and just if you're into the outdoors, there's no better place to be than Boise, Idaho. 300 plus days of sunshine, high desert, and there was a river that ran through the town right behind our campus. And I remember people would go jogging at lunch break, and then some people would go fly fishing at lunch break. So it was just a unique place to be and really awesome.
I bet. Well, we talked about, I brought up how you were at Minnesota, and you obviously been at other stops, and now at Cincinnati. Kind of getting back to the Big 12 future. So you're not new to the Power 5 level as an athletic administrator. So how do you think that will help you? And I'm not really sure how much this would change from, being in your previous conference to the Big 12, but how will that help you having that experience in the Big 10, for example, in your decision-making and really representing your institution with your AD colleagues around the table when those discussions come up?
Yeah, I do think it'll help. I mean, obviously, it's the resource differences between the Big 10 and some of the G5 conferences are pretty stark. And so, having seen it at the Big 10 level, we do a lot of great things here, and we provide a great experience for our student athletes across the board. But there are some areas that I know that we need to get better. And so I'm using this period of time. It's kind of a ramp up period. We call it a day one campaign, so that when we hit the ground, we're going to hit the ground running in the Big 12. When we start day one, we're going to be able to compete across the board in all of our sports. And so, things like nutrition for the student athletes, mental health for our student athletes, some of the facility projects that we have that we can complete here in the next 2 years. Those are all the things that are on my mind. So it's full growth mode. We've got to get to a certain level, a higher level, but we've been growing for a long time. So we're just going to continue doing that.
Yeah, you're kind of blessed with this. I think some people get so caught up in, the change of realignment in the news, but you're really blessed to have a pretty long runway to get things done before you get in there so that you can compete right away. I've mentioned at the beginning your facilities, and you just mentioned there's some facility projects. What are some of the projects that to compete at the Big 12 level for facility aspects that you all feel like you need to change, or what are you trying to finish?
Yeah, we've done a lot. As you mentioned, we put $160 million into facilities over the last 10 years, and included a huge project in Nippert, our football stadium, that's right here connected to our athletic complex. And then Fifth Third Arena, which is also connected to our athletic complex. We redid that entire arena, and it's one of the best, in my opinion, in the country right now, based on the renovation that we did. Another $80 million project. So those were huge, and those are kind of the two staples of what you need: your basketball arena and your football stadium to be in good shape. But now we've got to expand, and we've got to think about what makes our football program better, and that's going to be a standalone football facility with a performance center. That's something that we got to get to, and we've got some good traction on that already, so we're going to push hard there. And then we've got some locker room projects that we need to do for several of our teams that just have not gotten all the way through and all the way completed. So we just got done with our football locker room fundraising, so that will be completed at the end of this year. And then we're going to move into a basketball project on a locker room lounge area, and then we've got some of our other sports working in that same area as well.
Yeah, a lot going on. What I think is just awesome is that you can literally you could throw a baseball or a football in any direction and hit every facility right there. It's just they're all incredible. I mean, the baseball stadium is top notch. One thing I did hear you say, and I think in your press conference, and is completing a football practice facility, like an indoor. But so you all have like a bubble system, right? Can you explain that? And was that already done before you had got there? I'm guessing it's probably been in place for a while, but it seems like in the Midwest, a really good temporary solution, I would think, right?
Yeah, it's really worked out well. Actually, it's the old bubble, supported by the air within the field, and it goes up at a certain time, and then it comes down at a certain time. So we just make sure that we catch the coldest months of the year and have the bubble up. And it's talked about as the football bubble, but really we use it for a lot of different sports in the winter. And Cincinnati's a pretty moderate temperature coming from Minnesota, so you're only talking 2 or 3 months that you really got to focus in on making sure that you got some coverage there. But the bubble works really well, but it's just time to do something different and do it at a higher level, and so that's why we're talking about a standalone permanent facility.
Yeah, and you all have very similar weather. So I live closer to Indianapolis than I do Bloomington, and so Indianapolis and Cincinnati are very comparable, about an hour and a half away. I worked at University of Indianapolis. We were blessed with hosting the Super Bowl in Indianapolis back in 2012, and so that actually the NFC stays at UIndy. So they actually built and mostly funded an indoor facility with a bubble, and the bubble system does work, but it's obviously better if you can have a standalone facility. But I just think that might be something that some people listening that maybe they haven't thought about doing that as at least a temporary solution. So thanks for talking about that. The last thing I want to talk about this transition of resources. I mean, what are some of the other contracts or financial implications that an AD has to think about with a change like this, whether it's coaching contracts, other people's contracts and salaries, but also, game contracts? How does that all get worked out? And is that something that you really need, that long runway of a change, to really work your schedule changes out with all your sports?
Yeah, I'll start with your first question. I mean, obviously, you look at where you're at in terms of your salary pools and your salaries for your head coaches. So that's certainly something that you start to analyze pretty quickly. So we'll have to look at that. And then on the side of, I'm sorry, what was it? Remind me of the second part of that, Travis. I apologize.
Just like game contracts or any other type of contract that you might, maybe someone's not thinking about right away that is involved in this change.
Yeah. Game contract wise, outside of football, you're really doing those year to year. So you can make adjustments as needed. And we certainly will. And we'll look at our Big 12 schedule and have to figure out what that means for RPIs and those types of things. And it'll probably be a different philosophy. Football, obviously, we've scheduled out a ways, and that will depend a little bit on how many conference games you play. There may be a little bit of adjustment there, but I think we're in actually pretty good shape as we start to look at that long term. We've got a nice number of games scheduled out, and then kind of a mix of competition coming in. So I think we'll be all right there.
Well, based on this kind of jump from to the Big 12, it seems like a lot of these facilities were built as part of the plan to go into the Big East, and with all these facilities, because all the facilities seem to be when I did a little bit of research, all kind of built like in the 2006 area. But it sounds like you all have some great plans for doing that. Now, there was obviously a lot of growth already happening whenever you joined Cincinnati as the athletic director. I'm trying to be tactical here for people that it doesn't have to be when they're transitioning to a new conference, but just in general, becoming the AD at an institution that's been going through a lot of rapid change or growth. What did you do when you got there and you arrived to actually digest all that information, that everything was going on, whether in the institution or the athletic department, so that you can actually wrap your head around what the priorities need to be? Are you relying on other people, your senior leadership team? What does that look like whenever you arrive on day one and you're trying to wrap your head around all these changes?
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. I think you got to be patient with yourself and with the process, because you're not going to figure it out all in one day. And the puzzle pieces will start to connect later, and so you're just digesting as much as you can. But one of the things I did immediately was try to get across campus, try to understand what our president's vision was for campus. I thought that was crucial as I tried to then turn around and implement a mission statement for us and some direction for the athletics department. I wanted to make sure it connected with his overall vision. That was a start. And then obviously you're going to those within your athletic department and your donor base that have been here a long time and know a lot about the history. And it is a bit of a history lesson to understand where you're going. You got to understand where you've been, type of thought process. So, there were some books that I read. There was a book about the rivalry between Xavier and Cincinnati that I received early on and sat down and read, and that gave me some really good background. But those types of things, you're trying to just educate yourself. So, but it just takes time. And again, I'm still learning, having been here close to 2 years. But I'm sure I'll continue to learn for a while. And you got to rely on those that know a lot more than you do.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize probably that Xavier is like right across the street. I mean, you guys are like 2 miles away from each other. So it's the basketball coach at Xavier men's basketball is from my small hometown of Danville, Indiana. So, but I root for Cincinnati and everything except for on Saturdays when they play IU. So I'm not surprised at all. I've been telling people for a long time, really Cincinnati and Houston. I was just so surprised that it took this long to actually join an autonomy conference. It just seemed like the resources and the size of the institutions had been there for so long that I'm not surprised at all that you two institutions for sure are going. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about that. I'd like to maybe end it with any advice that you have for the people that listen to this, or the same people listen to the other podcasts where ADs are interviewed at senior level administrators, mid-level staff as well. What would maybe your advice be for them, that whether they want to be an AD or not, of just with all the changes coming to college athletics, how do they stay on top of it? What can they do in their current jobs and outside of their current jobs just to be prepared for any opportunity?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that you've got to educate yourself as much as possible on what's going on in your industry. I mean, I think that's somewhat obvious, but really dig in. I mean, we talked about the governance piece. You should dig in on what that means and what are some of the things that this constitutional convention is looking at. Take the time to understand that, because a lot of people above you won't. And so all of a sudden you become an expert in that area. And that's no matter what you do. If you're involved in college athletics, you should know about that and try to learn about that. And then I think the other thing that I always try to promote is having a global perspective on what's going on. Pay attention to the general news around the world. I think that's important too. I think it's always good for us to have perspective. What we do is important, but at the end of the day, it's kids playing sports, and it's not as important as some of the other issues going on. And so I just think it's important to be really well-rounded and be able to take some of the things you're learning from the world news and local news and then bring them into the job that you have. I think that's really, really important too.
I appreciate that. And the last thing I will ask is, with the change, it's not really a question, it's a suggestion. I think it'd be really cool to see. I follow these higher education associations and coalitions, and kind of like similar to athletic conferences. But you all are a part of the Great Cities Universities Coalition, and just happens to be the University of Houston is too. I think it'd be cool if we can start, a Great Cities Challenge between Cincinnati and Houston. I wonder with this change, there's obviously some, I think, history of a renewal, maybe potential for rivalries in the Big 12. If you all, as I'm sure many people have given you suggestions on who those rivals should be with the change.
They have, and I think a natural for us is West Virginia because of the Big East days and how close we are, drivable for our fan bases to get here. So that one has popped up several times. We've obviously got a healthy rivalry right now going with UCF and Houston, so those will continue. But it'll just be fun to create some new ones and some new traditions, and just the basketball tradition that we have fits in so well to some of those Big 12 schools as well. I mean, we've already had conversations with our fans about the chance to go to Fog Allen and play there would just be amazing. Oscar Robertson holds the all-time individual record for most points in a game at Fog Allen. I believe that's still correct. I heard that anyway. So that type of thing is just an awesome connection for us and our basketball tradition.
John Cunningham, University of Cincinnati Athletic Director, thanks for being on the Higher Ed Athletics podcast. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Travis. Take care.